Hello and welcome to another evening of frank conversation here on Hard Copy, where we bring you the people behind the news. I'm Maokwe Yusuf. Last week we started a conversation with the governor of Ekiti State and chairman of the Nigeria Governors Forum, Dr. Kayode Fayemi, where we dwelt largely on the declining state of security in the country and solutions. The recent news of an attack on the governor of Benue State over the weekend pressed home the urgency of the situation. This week, we bring you the concluding parts of our conversation, where we focus on the rising suspicion and distrust among the citizenry, manifesting in the growing controversy around the wearing of hijab in state-funded schools, which is now springing up in different states of the country. Plus, the stance of governors on the deregulation of petrol prices and whether or not Governor Fayemi has an eye on 2023. You've talked about how, governors, for instance, have talked about how the National Livestock Transformation Plan is what should be brought back. They don't want open grazing. I want to first of all ask if that is representative of all of the governors in Nigeria, or is that just a section of governors who feel that?
I would like to think most governors can see the value in stemming the tide of this crisis via the various initiatives contained in the National Livestock Transformation Plan.
You'd like to think. I would think you already had the numbers and you know for certain.
It's not really a numbers game. The NLTP has been characterized in many ways that may not necessarily be what it is. Our own understanding of what it is a dedicated space for protected grazing of cattle in a defined area. And people have interpreted that to mean, they're going to import so people into my space and they will do this. Many of these things will be private sector initiatives. Some may be state-led initiatives. In the Southwest, where I come from, we've had ranches since the 50s. Government-owned ranches since the Awolowo days. We have just resuscitated a place in Ekiti in partnership with Promasido, the milk company, where we've provided space for grazing, 500 hectares of land for grazing. And at the same time, space paddocks, as you may call it, for the cattle.
How does that handle the question of farmers coming into your state to graze, for instance?
Farmers.
Herders. Are they allowed to go into that space which you have provided for the private entity?
No, that's a private entity.
To graze as well?
No, the private entity paid for that. They have complete control of that situation.
So the question is,
but we are also setting aside a government space.
Because this has been brought up, this has been proffered as a solution to open grazing.
Yes, because open grazing is clearly a problem. Open grazing forces some of the cattle to damage crops and properties of farmers.
So what I'm saying is, if you have this arrangement with private entities, the NTLP allows private entities come into the business and, they can even import cows and whatever.
We don't even need NTLP, National Transformation Livestock Plan, for that. That can go on.
The question is, how does it answer the problem of open grazing?
How it simply answers the problem of open grazing is that it is a protected, defined space where you provide all sorts of facilities, veterinary services, spaces for the herders themselves to sleep. And this is no big deal. We already have state intervention for farmers. We have Anchor Borrowers Program for rice. We have Cocoa Transformation Program. We have Cassava Transformation Program. We have all these things. Nobody is talking about that. So why can't we have something for livestock?
What's sitting in the way? What is sitting in the way?
Precisely. What is sitting in the way? Lack of will. And now the inevitability of the moment is forcing, or shall I say encouraging, states to look at this as a solution to the problem of violence and altercations between
Lack of
farmers.
will on whose part?
Lack of will on the part of everyone involved, particularly governments, because there's been an over-concentration on agriculturalists rather than pastoralists. This is an age-long problem, but there's always been a way of give and take, of settling the problems. But it has proliferated and become more violent for a variety of reasons. Climate change, you may put.
Which government? State government or federal government?
Both. Subnational government. Agriculture is on the concurrent list.
There's a lack of will. The NTLP is not working as a result of a lack of will.
No. I'm not talking about NTLP per se. NTLP is new.
Indeed.
NTLP is new, but you have to sign up as a state for NTLP. And the last time I checked, I think only about 20 states have signed up.
The complaint we have heard
NTLP.
is that even the states that have signed up have not seen any movement on the part of the federal government.
That is what needs to now happen as a major issue that is affecting almost every part of the country. The federal government has to step up to the plate and support that program by making available resources to states in order to provide this space with all of the facilities required there. So you're right.
I know, I was clarifying. It wasn't a question of whether or not I was right, but you rightly pointed out there's a lot of suspicion right now. You know, people not moving. I don't know, maybe a little wary or what the solutions are. But that suspicion is also
breeds suspicion.
It's also permeating almost every area of our lives. So some people will say, is it political suspicion now? Is it just at the political level, or is this something that on a daily basis Nigerians still are having to face? But you know, let's deal with the one at the political level, because this is the one that we see that makes its way into the news. Only recently we saw some controversy brewing in Kwara State, which is threatening to get out of hand, between Christians and Muslims in that state over hijab. Is this something that has been considered within the ranks of the Governors Forum? Because it would seem that this is becoming a state issue. It's moved from Lagos to Osun to Kwara. We don't know which state it's going to go to next. Is there some peer review going on?
Frankly,
on that matter?
It's a storm in a teacup. I dealt with this issue in my first term and provided it's about rights. I mean, and it's largely in state schools. At least in my case, when it happened in Ekiti, we handled it within the ambit of the state school system, and we allowed those who want to use their hijab to do so. But we don't force everybody to use hijab, and it's even not all Muslims who necessarily want to use hijabs when they go to school. But in Ekiti, we allow whoever chooses to do so, because how you dress is not necessarily a state matter, as long as you are not indecent in your dress mode. And to the best of my knowledge, wearing hijab does not constitute indecency. If anything, some would see it as chaste and proper dressing. So, but I think you are right. I think we've become a lot more intemperate, maybe due to other factors, and people tend to see this as the intrusion of religion into every space, especially if they are of an opposing faith or they are of an opposing fundamentalism. So, but I think what we need to do is improve on the bridges of understanding in the country, because this necessarily shouldn't have constituted the brouhaha that seemed to have followed what happened in Kwara State.
In your state, did you have a situation where it was missionary schools, or schools that used to be missionary schools, or was it state funded? What was the limits of your intervention?
Even in state funded schools, we had no issue with it.
I mean in missionary schools, did you have a say, for instance, if they're funding their schools 100%?
Oh, no, 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 no. If they're funding the school 100%, we do not necessarily intervene in that. But there are broad guidelines that the State Ministry of Education came out with. And most missionary schools, it's not a new thing. When I went to a missionary school, and when we were in school, there were Muslims who were also in the schools with us, and they were allowed to go for their prayers. But you know what? Many of them also voluntarily joined us in the chapel. It's more about understanding than anything else. Most of the schools up north in Nigeria, they're missionary schools. In Kano, in Kaduna, in many of these places, and Muslims are the ones who dominate the attendance in those schools. It has not affected the understanding that they have. But I just think there is a sense in which we have demagogues and extremists who seize on all of these issues and then expand them beyond imagination, creating chaos all around the country.
What solutions do you see could be proffered on this matter?
The solution for me is that we need to play down on religiosity in our country. There is too much religiosity in our country right now. That may well be the product of poverty, immiseration, and frustration in society. But government also has to do more to strengthen the capacity of the state to respond to the yearnings of the people. When you get that, people will generally play down all this attachment to religion, because in many cases, those religious spaces have also become social security spaces. That's where people find succor, rather than in the ordinary space where they live. And that is why they get attached to some of this superficial extremism that has crept into religion in our country.
I'm going to ask you this one last one. And it's a question I consider an indulgence, considering the fact, considering where we are, the urgency facing us right now. But I can't avoid it because you have received endorsements already from your State House of Assembly. A number of traditional rulers are also speaking on the matter. Are you considering running for presidency come 2023?
I'm considering finishing well in Ekiti in 2022.
2023 hasn't cropped up yet on your horizon.
I have a job. No,
is it for jobless people?
Well, frankly, I am eternally grateful to Ekiti people for giving me the opportunity to govern the state twice. And I still have a lot to deliver on that agenda. So the future will take care of itself. I have no means of knowing what's going to happen, but for me, the certainty is that I'm governor of Ekiti State, and that term expires in October 2022. That's the job I have for now.
Do you not know ambition for the national level just yet? Just asking. Yes or no?
I'm laughing. And you know why I'm laughing? Because I get asked this question all the time. I don't know anyone, any serious-minded politician who would have the opportunity to govern a country with the blessings that we have in Nigeria, in spite of the challenges, that will not give it a shot. But we're not there yet.
Welcome back. You're watching Hard Copy, coming to you from our studios in Abuja. We're bringing you the concluding part of our conversation with Dr. Kayode Fayemi, Governor of Ekiti State, which we wrap up with his reason for optimism for a continued united Nigeria. Let me take you back again to the issue of the economy. Your statement from the Nigeria Governors Forum dealt very strongly with the issue of the AstraZeneca vaccines. It was very unequivocal when he said they're in support of it, they think it is safe for Nigerians. And I think people have gotten the message. You've also led by example. A number of you governors have taken the vaccine publicly. The president also took leadership in that direction, and the vice president. just wondering though, why did it seem that there wasn't much said about the issue of petrol subsidies, which we've seen come up again unavoidably in this month of March? At least we've been told that we're safe for the month of March. No one knows what is coming up in April, and it would seem that they were waiting for the meeting of the governors forum to be able to clearly state if we're going back to the regime of subsidies or we're going to go full throttle on deregulation.
Marco, what I know, regardless of what governors think about this, we have one economy that we're running in this country. And what I know from my reading of the 2021 Appropriation Act, there is no provision for subsidy in that act. So, theoretically, there is no subsidy. And when the price of crude in the international market was around $40 or thereabouts, the pump price also went down. Naturally, in every country, it's a no-brainer. When the pump price, when the crude price goes up, pump price also goes up. In fact, in countries like the United Kingdom, almost double when that happens, because there is a huge provision of tax in the consumption of PMS, and they also want to discourage many people from using PMS in this age of renewable energy.
Because they also have plenty of alternatives.
Exactly, they have plenty of alternatives. In our case, I am sure you know, my sister, that kerosene had been deregulated more than a decade now, which is what most ordinary people, poor people, use. Diesel, AGO, has also been deregulated. So PMS is the one that is a big challenge for us. At least that's the way we see it at the level of the Governors Forum. And we feel that we need to begin to look at an alternative. The alternative, thankfully, that we have argued for and that the federal government is also pursuing vigorously is the gas expansion program. So that once you can convert to gas, and there are incentives, particularly for transporters, to convert to gas without any loss of quality in their vehicles. And there is also a facility provided for them to do this without paying out of pocket. I believe we need to gradually move away from this obsession that we clearly have all cultivated with PMS, because we hear that we are consuming 60 million liters or thereabouts daily. The truth of the matter is, everybody that I've spoken to in the industry knows that we are not consuming anywhere above 30 million in Nigeria. So where does that 30 million go to? Our neighboring countries. Why are we reluctant to do what is necessary to curb that? If our immigration, security, customs are not able to do that.
We locked the border down at some point. Were we getting figures any different from what our current consumption is?
Well, we may lock the border down with the border still providing alternative exit routes. That's not impossible or unlikely. And
we were told that we're paying the market price of petrol for petrol. At some point it went down, it was gone up. Now that it's about to.
So why is it that
go up astronomically?
Why is it that we have chosen? Because the president, as you know, is very, very wary of anything that might constitute more than a manageable increase for ordinary people. That's the.
So it is true that, you know, what the price, I mean, that is being, PPRA came out recently.
The price that is being paid now is
212 naira is what they're proposing.
If they
from 165 or 160, depends on which filling station you go to.
If they go by the calculation of what the crude oil price is today.
Indeed. So what I'm saying is we're looking at least a 50 naira increase, which is rather steep, you know, on a liter of petrol. Now, the argument of Labour is we cannot continue in a import-driven, deregulated economy when we produce
which we agree with.
Crude oil.
We agree with. I totally subscribe to that argument that Labour has made.
Yes.
And both the private sector is doing quite a bit about that.
Yes.
From what I know, the Dangote refinery is coming on stream in 2022. And there are modular refineries. Unfortunately, most of the modular refineries are not producing PMS. They're producing other forms of fuel. So that's not helping us at the moment. The truth of the matter is that there are difficult decisions to take, and Labour must acknowledge that those difficult decisions will be taken.
Is there
but what government needs to do?
No, just quickly.
What government needs to do,
yes,
Makwe, is convince Labour and ordinary Nigerians that whatever gains would come from deregulated prices will be plowed back into supporting the poor and the vulnerable.
Nigerians had this story before in 2012. There was Shopee. There was a whole stream of things.
And that's why,
you know,
me,
right
that's
now,
a wrong approach
we've been
to
told about automotive gas, whatever it was launched, you know.
The national gas expansion
just a
scheme,
few weeks or months ago.
Correct.
And they were saying that nothing is happening there. We've seen, there was a lot of fanfare around that launch. That seems to be on hold
Actually,
right now.
quite a bit is happening. The minister was just in Ekiti 3 weeks ago to launch the Ekiti version.
Is there a lot of honesty and sincerity in dealing with Nigerians on this matter? Because only recently, again, just this week, FEC launched, told us that they're going to spend $1.5 billion to renovate the Port Harcourt refinery.
Well, I'm not a member of cabinet, so I don't know what informed that decision. But clearly, I believe a level of analysis must have gone into it, and the approval process must have taken into consideration the cost and benefit analysis of that decision. I wouldn't have taken that decision, given the fact that we know that a big refinery, private sector driven, is coming on stream. But I don't have the information that led to that decision at FEC.
So given that, but also looking at the cost of the proposed renovation, can we justify it at all, given where we are economically as a country?
You know, when you are outside a decision-making frame, there are some information that may not be available to you. If you look at it at pure face value, you're right. It may not be justifiable, but we don't have all the information responsible for that decision. And that's why I said, sitting where I am, I wouldn't support it. But I also don't have the information that led to that decision.
Are you hopeful, though, about the continued unity of this country?
Oh, absolutely. I'm an incurable Nigerianist, if you can call it that. Not because we don't have challenges, and not because we shouldn't deal with certain aspects of our nationhood that have generated concerns amongst many Nigerians. But as I argued in my Arewa House lecture a couple of months ago, the way to go is not to talk about secession or division of the country. The way to go is devolution of powers, and I've made specific recommendations around certain items on the exclusive list of the Nigerian Constitution that should devolve to the local level. I think if we do that, there'll be greater accountability at the local level and greater capacity to also respond to issues.
Well, that's the program tonight. The road ahead certainly isn't a smooth one, but where there's a will, we'll always find a way. Find what keeps your will intact for this country and leave us a word or two about it using the handles on your screen. Thank you for watching. I'm Mark Yusuf. Good night.